Okay, I'm working on my solar install project, but I decided to remove my Dometic RM1350. That's the double door fridge. Decided to remove it to run my solar wires back behind the refrigerator. But I wanted to use this as a kind of a rare opportunity to take a look at this fridge in detail when it's out of the cabinet and go over all the components, talk about how I removed it, and give you some ideas if you're going to work on a project like this. So to start off with, turn everything off, disconnect from the power. If you're plugged in, shut your 12-volt switches off, shut your gas line off. If you've done that, now you can come into the back of the refrigerator, basically from the outside, the cabinet, and you can start unplugging things. And you're going to have probably two plugs here, one for the fridge, one for the ice maker. So unplug both of those. You're going to have a drain line here you can unplug. You're going to have a water line. You can shut the valve off, take the water line off for the ice maker. You have a gas line, and then you're going to have your 12-volt wires. In my case, they're brown and black, so brown being positive, black being negative. And on the back of the fridge, you've got your plugs, right? I just tucked them up in here for now for your refrigerator and ice maker. You got your water line for the ice maker. And then down here you're going to have your block where it's going to be your positive and negative. Just keep note of which one you're using for what. And then you've got your gas valve here for the refrigerator. And this right here is a solenoid, and these would go out fairly common on this unit, and that's because they're stuck next to a heat source. Get a little bit of light in there. But unfortunately, Dometic put this thing in a terrible spot. It's really close to the chimney there, so over time they do fail. And the real bad part is Dometic will not sell you just the solenoid. They're going to make you buy the entire gas valve at $200+. But I did find you could use another model. I got a video out there. It's the RM1350, won't run on gas. Take a look at that. It'll give you an option where you can fix this for about $15. So take a look at that video. Also note that there's a little shutoff valve right there, that little, right about here, you'll see it. And that's another shutoff valve for your gas, manual, if you want to shut that off. You've got your electric part of heating elements. So you got two heating elements there on this refrigerator, and there's a procedure in the service manual how to ohm across them to find out if one of those are bad, if your fridge is not working on electric. So let me talk about, once I got all that disconnected, then you've got a few screws you got to remove. And on this 1350, I only had one screw right here. So I took one screw out of the back. There's no screw on this side like there might be on the single door units. You've got one there. Then you got to go to the front of the refrigerator, and you're going to have screws in each corner. You're going to have one on this side, same on this side, and then two on the bottom. I can't show you those because I got this thing on a cart, which I also want to mention. This is a cart from Harbor Freight. It's a hydraulic cart, and the nice thing about it is it fits through the door perfectly, and it lets me, move the refrigerator up and down to perfectly match the height of my cabinet. So it made it where I could actually pull this refrigerator by myself. Now, this refrigerator is over 200 pounds, so I wouldn't advise trying to do it even with two people and pull it out and set it down. And I think you're gonna have a chance of damaging it more than if you use a cart like this or something that's at the right height where you can just slide it out. So let's take a look at the back of the refrigerator here, because this is something that I was really interested in. In this refrigerator here, they talk about possibly having fans. You definitely have fans if you've got the refrigerator that's in a slide out, because your intake is coming in through the side and your exhaust is going out the side. But on the roof vented models, a lot of times they won't have fans. So the only way you're going to tell is whether you can hear them or you take this thing out and you can see them. And in my case, I never heard the fans run no matter what. So I wasn't sure I had any. And when you're down below trying to look up through the coils, you can't see them. It's really hard to see these fans. So I was surprised to find that I had two fans, one here and I had one here. Now, I noticed the fans didn't run, so I wanted to figure out why. And I started up here at this thermal switch. Okay, so I pulled these plugs off, put an ohm meter across, hit this thing with a heat gun, and when it got to the right temperature, it did close, so I know that this switch was working. But what I found was this top screw was loose, so it was not making good contact with the fins. So I'm thinking that could be why it wasn't engaging the fans. The other thing I found is I decided to test each fan. So here you've got 2 plugs, and I just took the plugs out, put a 12-volt battery in, and one of my fans was spinning and the other fan was not, and that's why it's been replaced. So trying to find these fans, let me get you a picture of exactly which model is in these fridges from the factory. These are Sunons, but they are not your normal computer case fan. These, as you can see, are 4.7 watts, which means they are a 4,500 RPM and a 75 CFM fan. Your normal computer case fan is only about 2,000 RPMs or less and about 45 CFM or less. And I had a really hard time trying to find this fan. I couldn't find it anywhere online in stock. So I went with what I could get, and I went with some of the best rated computer case fans. These are Noctuas, and they run at 2,000 RPMs and they push around 45, 46 CFM. I think they're pushing that specification a little bit, because when I hook these up, they're nowhere near the airflow that this fan is. Even 2 of them together are not pushing as much air as this one. So these are definitely better fans. Now, the downside is these fans are noisy and these fans are whisper quiet. So since I've been running this fridge for a couple years with essentially no ventilation at all with fans, I felt this setup will be fine. I'm still gonna be able to push plenty of air through here, and I should be good to go. I did make a modification though, and I do recommend, if you're going to take your fridge out, I would make this recommendation for a modification, and that is get yourself some wire and a switch, okay? And what you want to do is the single wire here is the feed for the power that comes in, comes through the switch, and then it goes out to 2 wires that feed the fans. And these 2 wires are tied together, so all you need to do is splice in and put a wire on this side and a wire on this side, come down to the bottom, install yourself a switch. And this is basically going to be an override switch. So when you get out there to that 100-degree plus day and your refrigerator's really struggling, and you might be at a point where the fans are either kicking on or off, or not doing what you want, you can just come in here, flip the switch, and those fans will run non-stop until you turn this switch off. And even if you turn the switch back off, and you've still got this switch up here that'll activate them, but it gives you an override to force those fans to run. So perfect time to do it right here. All right, so that's basically the removal, and let me talk about what I really wanted to show, and that's just what the back of this refrigerator looks like, right? So you've got your fins up here. This is really what you're trying to cool to help this thing work better. And as you go down, you've got your chimney here. This is going to have both your gas and electric. Here you've got your electric elements. So if your fridge is not cooling on the electric side, you want to look at the service manual. It'll tell you how to ohm these guys out and figure out whether you're not in specification. And then I already talked a little bit about the gas valve. And then this is the exact model of this fridge. And then you got your water valve here for your ice maker and your plumbing for it. Now, one other thing I wanted to note is Dometic put this box down here, which has your circuit board and a couple fuses in, and they put this in a terrible spot because when this fridge is mounted in the cabinet, you've got to get to this back side. There's a little tab here that you've got to get like a screwdriver in and pull it, and then you've got one on this side that you also have to pull, and that's to open this little door. And when you open this door, you can see all the wiring as well as a couple fuses. So you've got a small fuse up here in the corner, and then you've got one kind of buried back in here. You can see that orange part of that fuse right there. So you can check those fuses if this is not running at all. If you've got a total failure, then I would check those fuses. But again, it's kind of difficult to get to them. And then finally, there will be another fuse. And the factory, they end up putting in this huge bundle of wires down here. And you don't even know what's in there. So you end up taking the zip ties off, and you'll probably find you got some kind of fuse like this. And if your fans aren't running, if your light's not running, things like that, it's probably this fuse. So, you know, you can get to that pretty easy from the outside. Go ahead and check that. You've also got a little thermostat right here. That's where that guy's at. So all these things are in the service manual. You can check. You've got a relay, and this is just your standard relay, 30, 87, 87A type of relay. So you can check that relay out as well. So it's not really too complicated back here. You know, go over it, clean everything, clean all your coils off, check them for any leaks or anything. And I'll mention Dometic does have a service bulletin out about adding a third fan, and they want you to add that right here about 7 inches in. You just stick a fan right here, but you got to kind of glue it to the back of the fridge. I didn't want to do that. I felt it all the bouncing around. I'm not sure how well that'd work. So I added my third fan on this same rail that was already there, and I just took it off and made that little cutout to get the best airflow. So the final thing that I want to talk about here is I went ahead and I measured my refrigerator from the very front of the cabinet to the very back of the box, not to the end of the coil, but just to the box. And I did that because I wanted to see the relationship that it had between the front of the cabinet here to the back where the vent is on this one. And the vent actually goes up and around before it goes out. So it's kind of a curve shape before it goes out. And what I found was this refrigerator has got about a ½ inch of space above it, but it had about 3/4 of a space back here where that vent started. So what that meant was air that was coming up here could come up and go on the top of this fridge and kind of just get stuck there. So I wanted to solve that problem, and what I did was I just took foil tape, put about 4 or 5 layers of it, and I made a little wing short enough where I'll be able to push the fridge in, but it's going to direct that airflow around to get out that vent. So hopefully that will also help this fridge a little bit. And then obviously you go through and check out your other foil tape, things like that. But if you've got any questions, comments on this refrigerator, put them in the comments below. I'll try to answer as many of them as I can. But the next step here, now that I've got everything done and I've run my solar wires, as I mentioned, down through my vent, drilled a hole and went down through the cabinet, came out below here and was able to feed it where I needed to. So now that I've got that done, I'll be able to put this refrigerator back in and be good to go and finish the rest of my solar project. So hopefully this will help you, give you some ideas, and I will see you on the next.